The spring portal window is open. What does Oklahoma need? We'll discuss on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the Care of Sports app. You can also hear him covering Oklahoma baseball, which he'll be doing this weekend from the beautiful landscaped views of Provo, Utah. Josh, it's spring portal season. The Oklahoma Sooners haven't played their spring game yet, so we might not have a lot of movement or quote-unquote processing over the next few days, but things could change after Oklahoma plays their spring game this next week. However, it wouldn't be surprising to hear Oklahoma getting in on the action early this week to kind of set themselves up. But if we're just looking at the roster as it is right now, are there a couple areas or maybe one area that you feel like the Oklahoma Sooners kind of need to continue to add talent?
Well, because of the Troy Everett injury and really just the overall situation with the offensive line, that to me is a no-brainer. If the right opportunity presents itself, center, guard, then probably Oklahoma again needs to try and help itself out of the transfer portal. So that to me, I feel like is obvious. The ads beyond that, I don't know that there's anything particularly glaring for Oklahoma. You always feel like if you can find another great defensive lineman, sure. Trenches both sides always at a premium. Maybe one more experienced defensive back as a puzzle piece, but probably if we have this conversation in a week and a half's time, we have a better idea what Oklahoma needs if somebody exits. But that's kind of what I'm thinking right now today. What about you?
Yeah, if we're looking at the offensive line, I think a lot of it is still just so unsettled because you've had guys injured and not practicing. You've obviously got the big Troy Everett injury that's going to keep him out for significant time. But also you just haven't had a lot of answers and a lot of guys stepping up. I mean, you've seen Jacob Sexton playing both left tackle and left guard and playing well. So you feel good that he's going to take one of those spots on the left side of the offensive line. Well, okay, whichever spot he doesn't take, we need to have a little bit of a better answer. Heath Ozida most recently was practicing with the twos, in which the media was available for practice. So what does that mean for him? I think there's a lot of suggestions out there that he's going to be your starting left guard, but I think that maybe not quite settled just yet either. Michael Tarkin obviously is going to be a player potentially at left tackle if you move Jacob Sexton into left guard. So I think, you do have some potential answers as Bill Bedenbaugh continues to look for the right five. Center, as much as we love Josh Bates, we love Josh Isosa, I think there's still some questions to be had there. And I think it's reasonable for them to continue to look for talent and look to add competitive depth to see, okay, who's going to rise and take a job. We've heard, maybe Gary and Hatchett could get some looks at center at some point, but I think he's been dinged up as well. So the offensive line is just the area that I don't know if we're going to feel great about it at all for some time. And we've kind of had this type of offensive line discussion for several off seasons, but this year it feels a little bit different where maybe there's a little bit more desperation to find some answers before you get to summer workouts and fall camp so that you feel a little bit more confident about what direction you're heading. Now they've got a lot of really talented players that they brought in the portal, but I could see them getting into the portal and still looking for an interior offensive lineman. The way people talk about Jacob Sexton is he could be another first round left tackle prospect. So you want to have that guy playing a premium position like left tackle. You don't want to have to bump him into guard. So if you need interior offensive line help, that could be something that they go into the portal for. Defensive back, I agree. I think you could find maybe another role player to help you play safety a little bit. We've seen this team like to play 4 safeties, and that's if you're considering Kendall Dolby a cheetah, which is where he finished last season, where he's played a lot this offseason as well. So, you're looking at your top trio, we could say right now, Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, Robert Spears Jennings. But if you feel like you need a little bit more experience to kind of sit there behind, Bowen and Robert Spears Jennings, just to provide you some insurance, because even though you've got a Reggie Powers and a Michael Boganowski and a Jaden Hardy, who are all looking really good as true freshmen, are you ready to rely on a true freshman to play significant snaps if, say, Robert Spears Jennings isn't available, or Peyton Bowen or Billy Bowman? So having a Key Lawrence, Reggie Pearson type that could be your 4th safety, play significant special team snaps, I think that makes some sense. And then, you touched on the defensive line. That's always going to be a place where you want to add talent. Again, they've got great players that are young that you could see getting significant snaps this season, but are you ready to rely on Jaden Jackson for 50 snaps a game, or David Stone for 40 to 50 snaps a game? Maybe they are. Maybe they think what they're seeing in spring camp is going to be what they see in the fall. But I think if you want to make sure that you're feeling really good about that position, it wouldn't surprise me to see them add another defensive tackle. I think edge, probably you're pretty good with Ethan Downs, R. Mason Thomas, Adepoju Adebaware, Caden Woolard, Trace Ford. The list goes on and on. You've got really good depth at edge. You got really good depth at linebacker. I think cornerback's got good depth as well. Wide receiver, you feel really good about, even though, Angelo Anthony's dinged up. Now Jaleel Farouk's dinged up. Nick Anderson's been dinged up. Deion Burks, Jaden Gibson are having some great springs right now and creating a lot of noise. So I think you feel good there. Tight end, I think you feel pretty good about. I think they're pretty solid across the board. It's offensive line, defensive line, maybe safety.
And the other thing is there's only so many spots. So from a scholarship standpoint, does somebody have to sort of get processed or make the decision to leave for this to even really be a reality for Oklahoma? Because OU's already gotten busy is the reality of the situation for the Sooners. They brought in Jake Roberts to address the tight end situation. You brought in Casey Thompson because you needed an experienced quarterback from a backup quarterback standpoint, or backup to the backup standpoint. You went and you got Hatchett, Tarkin, Weewoo. I mean, the list goes on. Spencer Brown, all to help you along the offensive line. You've already done that. Des Malone's the corner that you went and got. You're not really looking probably for that next wide receiver because you've got a good wide receiver, collection of wide receivers in Norman. You've got a good wide receiver haul, and you went and you added Deion Burks, who I think has a chance to be one of the best wide receiver gets out of the portal nationally. Sam Franklin, there's a running back that you supplemented the room with. Bauer Sharp to go along with Jake Roberts at tight end. So I just don't know truly how active Oklahoma is going to be. I would imagine if they are, it's a name or two. I don't think, it's not anywhere near the dozen names we've seen so far. There's just not enough spots.
Right. And I think it's going to have to be a player that is a significant upgrade over what you've already got. They're not going to go in and maybe get somebody that has the potential or the promise. You've got a lot of guys with potential, offensive line, defensive line. I think if you're going to add, it's going to be a guy that is significantly like, yes, he's a starter for us right now without any question, but we'll see. Adding veteran insurance is also a good idea. Who knows what happens with the offensive line, but if you're young guys like a Jake Taylor, Heath Ozaida, Josh Bates, if those guys step up, Jacob Sexton, if those guys are starters along your offensive line, then you've got really good veteran backups in Michael Tarkin and Spencer Brown and, a Gary and Hatchett that could at least supplement what you're doing with your young guys. So adding veteran insurance is never going to be a bad thing. So we'll see. I don't expect Oklahoma to be active early, if they're active at all. But I think after spring game, you might start seeing some things start to happen, at least even on the exit side of things. But we'll see. It's going to be fascinating to see how the spring portal window affects Oklahoma and their opponents coming up in the SEC. But spring game is coming for the Sooners. That's a great opportunity to answer some questions, also alleviate some concerns. But what are we looking to see this Saturday coming up in Norman? We're going to discuss that next, coming up here on Locked On Sooners. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, Josh, the spring game is upon us. Always a fun event, especially in the Brent Venables era. He's really tried to make it an event. And I think that's great. It's a great opportunity to rally the fan base, get everybody kind of re-energized, even though there's another 4 months until the football season starts. It's just kind of a nice midway point between the end of the last season and the beginning of the next season to give everybody a little bit of that hope springs eternal at the end of April. But also it's a great opportunity to host recruits. So it's an exciting weekend. There's going to be a lot of buzz in Norman, a lot of buzz all week long from Oklahoma fans, Oklahoma media as well. Let's start here on the positive side of things. Josh, what do you think Oklahoma can get from this on a positive note? What are you hoping to see that comes out of this? And you say, hey man, I'm feeling really good about this after the spring game.
Well, to the question on the board, can the spring game alleviate concerns? Absolutely. The spring game can alleviate concerns. It can alleviate a number of concerns. The unfortunate part of a spring game is it can also create concerns as you're alleviating concerns because it's good on good, or at least what we think is good on good right here, right now in the latter stages of April. If the offensive line plays better than expected, well, then all of a sudden now folks are going to have questions about the defensive line. And of course, if the defensive line dominates the offensive line in this thing, then people are going to have that thought confirmed that, this offensive line's got some serious problems. So it's always, you kind of have to take a little bit of all of it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because it is a glorified practice. It's a scrimmage. And having said that, okay, do I think that we can take some positives away from it? Can it alleviate some concerns? Yes. I would like to see both quarterbacks go play well. Now, that's relative to what happens in front of the quarterbacks. The offensive line's the big question mark going into this thing for Oklahoma. We'll get to that in a moment. But if I can exist in a world where we kind of watch it, we feel like, okay, the quarterbacks have a decent pocket, some pass protection, they've got time to operate. I want to see Jackson Arnold show me that he's got some pretty good command here. And I want to see the sizzle that we've been hearing about with Michael Hawkins.
Yeah, and I think there's an opportunity to see a lot of sizzle with Michael Hawkins, because if the offensive line isn't really up to snuff, you might be having to escape and run quite a bit. With Jackson Arnold, there's been a lot of talk about some of the interceptions that he's thrown in both in the Alamo Bowl and in spring camp. This is a dude that is a gunslinger. He's more risk averse than Dillon Gabriel was. Seth Littrell, I think, is a little bit more I said that wrong. Jackson Arnold is willing to take more risks than Dillon Gabriel was. I think Seth Littrell is willing to take more risks as an offensive coordinator than Jeff Lebby was. That in and of itself is going to lead to more interceptions. Jackson Arnold's got a bigger arm. He's going to be willing to throw more 50-50 balls than Dillon Gabriel was. Will that create some negative plays at times? Sure, it's going to. But it's also going to create some big plays because Jackson Arnold is going to throw it to Jaden Gibson, even if he's covered, because Jaden Gibson has got that unique ability to go win a one-on-one, even if he's covered. He's going to be able to sky above the defender and go get the ball, even if he's covered. And that's sometimes what you want out of your quarterback. You want your quarterback to go give your wide receiver a chance. But at the same time, sometimes that means okay, the defender's just going to win it and he's going to go get the ball. I don't know if everybody saw the highlight today, but Jackson Arnold threw a ball. It looked like probably, I think that was LV Bunkley Shelton. Number 6, I have to go back to the roster, but Peyton Bowen just came over and made a great play on the football. That's all we got to see. We don't get to see everything else in the play, just Peyton Bowen making a great play on the football. Sometimes it's going to happen. The defender is going to make a great play on the ball. So I'm excited to see what Jackson Arnold does in this, because our last memory of it was 4 turnovers. That's all everybody remembers. They don't remember the 381 yards passing. They don't remember the deep ball to Brennan Thompson. They don't remember the beautiful throw to Nick Anderson in the corner of the end zone. That was a great catch by Anderson. They don't remember the big run that he had at one point as well. So I'm excited to see Jackson Arnold kind of remind everybody why there's reason for optimism in this one. I think it's going to be difficult to get a gauge on the running game for similar reasons as the offensive line. So one thing I'm really excited to see, I'm excited to see Jaden Gibson, because yes, this is a guy that, had a rotational role last year. I think he's gotten lost in the discussion a little bit this offseason, because everybody's excited about Nick Anderson, and rightfully so, and Deion Bergson, rightfully so, and Jalil Farouk is still a significant player in the wide receiver rotation. But dude, Jaden Gibson, he had a great year in 2023, and I think he's about to take his game to another level. And with all the guys that are out, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do with a starter's level of snaps. And I think he's going to impress a lot of people.
Yeah, it would be fun to see that jump. We saw a big time jump from Nick Anderson, and now all of a sudden you expect him to be Oklahoma's best receiver this season. And why not something similar for Jaden Gibson? Deion Burks, by the way, number 6 for Oklahoma. So he
right. LV transferred. That's right.
Deion's got a chance to, hopefully be hauling a lot of those in and not winding up in the defensive back's hands. But hey, it's, again, this is what I'm talking about. The spring game, it leaves you feeling not so great on one end of the equation, and feeling really good about the fact that Peyton Bowen comes over and makes a play. Other positives we can see, I mean, I think we got to talk up front. The defensive line, I'd like to see, if this offensive line is struggling a little bit, well, then that means that I better see some guys get home and apply a little bit of pressure. Conversely, I don't want to see that all day, so it's going to be interesting to watch that battle at the point of attack. How much learning does Oklahoma have to go along its offensive line? Is anybody going to show up and kind of look like a bona fide starter in this thing up front offensively, John, for OU? Or is it going to look pretty patchwork, that there's been guys banged up and this thing's not very far along at all? And meanwhile, if that's the case, again, I go back to, then guess what? I better see some, if not free runners, I better see some guys getting into the backfield defensively.
Yeah. We're going to have our eyes on guys like Jaden Jackson and David Stone. I'll be curious to see how a guy like Danny Okoye holds up, against the significantly upgraded competition that he's going to be seeing. We've heard a lot of buzz about R. Mason Thomas. This is a guy that's going to flash. Can he stay healthy all year? The secondary, that they've got a tough challenge ahead of them with the wide receivers that they'll be facing. Can they hold up? Can they hold up in coverage long enough to make life difficult on the offensive line? That's going to be fun to watch as well. There's a lot of really intriguing one-on-one battles that we'll be watching. A lot of intriguing, options that we haven't seen yet or haven't heard a lot about. The linebacker core. I'm excited to watch the linebackers, because it's so deep and it's so talented. How they're going to sift through the depth that they have to come up with 2 to 3 starters for this year is going to be really, really fun to watch, because it's so good. And yeah, it's going to be so fun to see just this team and see what Seth Luttrell looks like, and what Zach Alley looks like, and what their play call looks like. They're not going to open the playbook and throw everything out there, but I think we'll get a bit of a feel for kind of their tendencies, or at least their feel for the game, or the way that they approach the game, whether it's with an aggressive mindset or what they're going to try to do. Because I mean, we saw from Jeff Lebby, hey, he wanted to throw a lot of screen passes, and we saw that in spring game just as much. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. In other portal news, it was a basketball portal weekend for the Sooners. They had a couple visitors in town. They lost a couple guys that made commitments. We'll discuss who those guys are coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
It's playoff time in the NBA and in the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel. It's your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We've been telling you we think Oklahoma getting the 9.5 points versus Texas, not too shabby right there. 7.5 on the win-loss total. I still like the over a lot for Oklahoma, but again, that's with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
And it's mock draft season. If you are an NFL fan, you know you've looked at mock drafts for your favorite team. Well, here on the Locked On Network, it is Locked On's NFL Mock Draft live on April 17 at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the Ultimate 6-episode series on April 17 at 7 o'clock to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Tyler Guyton, that's the name to watch. Will he go in the first round? Much like Anton Harrison did last year to the Jaguars. Mel Kiper's most recent mock draft had him going to the Dallas Cowboys. Wouldn't hate that one bit. Oh, Dallas needs a little bit of offensive line help to replace Tyron Smith, who went to the Jets of all places. But speaking of the portal, which, that window is open, is spring portal time, and Oklahoma has lost a lot. I mean, Porter Moser is going to have to portal Moser once again in this offseason. He lost Otega Oweh to the portal, John Hugley, Javian McCollum, and Milos Uzan made commitments over the weekend. Milos Uzan announced that he committed to Houston. That's a surprising pickup, or a surprising destination, I'll say, at least for Uzan. And then John Rothstein of CBS Sports reported that Javian McCollum is committing to Georgia Tech. Again, a bit of a surprising destination for McCollum. For Uzan, it's just, hey, Houston's one of the best teams in the country, the best programs in the country, led by Kellen Sampson. So this is going to be a fascinating one. If he goes there and has a big time season for the Cougars, that could say a lot about the development that's happening in Norman. For McCollum, he goes to a team that, hey, they finished 13th in the ACC last year. If he can raise them in the standings and have a nice year in the ACC, potentially it puts him on draftable status going into the 2025 NBA draft. But for Oklahoma, they hosted Brandon Garrison from Oklahoma State and Sean Pedulla of Virginia Tech, and also of Edmond fame over the weekend, and also received a prediction from On3 for Pedulla to end up with the Sooners. To me, these guys, Josh, you got to have both of these guys and more in the transfer portal.
Yeah, there's been a lot of smoke around Garrison for some time. Pedulla was a name that popped up early on people's radars out of the portal too, because of, again, the local tie. So yeah, we're back square one again. It feels like for Oklahoma, where it's an off season and basically, not every key player, but just about, has entered the transfer portal, save for Jalen Moore. So yeah, they got to get both of those guys, no doubt.
Yeah, and Pedulla was pretty productive for Virginia Tech this past season. The Hokies, they finished kind of middle of the pack in the ACC. He averaged 16.4 points per game, which led Virginia Tech in scoring, shot 42% from the field, was a 80% free throw shooter, shot just over 30% from three. So not necessarily his game, but had a couple back-to-back 30-point games, one against the top 25 Clemson team, and then also had 30 points again, or more than 30 points against Miami. So a productive scorer with the ball in his hands, and potentially can help get everybody else involved as well. Averaged just under 5 assists per game. So, potentially a nice replacement for both Uzan and McCollum. Yes, you got to get some big minutes out of point guard out of the portal because you lost 2 of your primary ball handlers. And then with Garrison, I mean, this is a big guy, 6'11", 240. He's going to be able to occupy the paint. And I think this helps you so much at center because Sam Godwin, he's solid. I'm not going to say he's not a good player. He's a solid player. But is he somebody that is going to help you if he's getting starter level minutes? I think if you have Garrison at the 5 and you can even rotate, Sam Godwin in at the 4 some, and then allow Jalen Moore, if he's sticking around, to play the 3 and be more of a slasher, I think that helps your starting 5 a whole lot more. And then you can slide Godwin over to play the 5 some, or if Cole Attack is ready to go, your 4-star freshman, if he's ready to play, I mean, that gives you another big 5 that can score and provide some productivity in the paint. So, I mean, Garrison, again, a big get. He had, a couple 20-point game or 3 20-point games this past year against Baylor, had a 20-point effort where he was 7 of 7 from the field. Also had 21 points against a BYU team that was top 25, and then had 20 points against West Virginia. So he's not just a big that is going to be rebounding and getting the dirty stuff, but he can also provide a little bit of a scoring punch for you as well.
If Oklahoma doesn't land these 2, then I think you're really going to see the fan base. If they're not there yet, it'll go into full freak out mode. I think for Oklahoma fans, because this feels very important that Oklahoma, they've got to supplement now out of the transfer portal. I hate it for Porter, who unfortunately, this is what happens when you don't get the tournament bid. And they've been close a couple of times to doing just that. And obviously this past season, they're the first team out. The Javian McCollum thing, to me, for a team that was that bad in the win-loss column a season ago for Georgia Tech, that just smells like NIL, that he probably did get a nice little package there. There's a decent little recruiting class coming in for Georgia Tech too. So I could see where that would be attractive, but obviously, to go add Javian McCollum to it is big time for Georgia Tech. But, for a team that was not on the brink of going to the NCAA tournament to leave a program that is a little bit curious on that front. I was a little bit surprised to see Uzan land with Houston, just, after the way that he kind of performed at Oklahoma. I didn't know that Houston would be knocking on the door, but obviously Kelvin Sampson and Houston were. And as you pointed out earlier, that's going to be something that Oklahoma fans are looking at either as, what was Houston doing? Or, why could Oklahoma not get this out of Milos Uzan next season?
And it's going to be intriguing to see this offseason, what we get out of, Jacob Cole and a Caden Cooper, guys that were, top 100, prospects in the last signing class, but you didn't see a whole lot of as true freshmen. Are they going to be ready to take on significant minutes? Because if they are, then potentially they can help you, and they can be big time players for you, because they were good players out of high school and you were excited about getting them. Now it's time for them to step up and take on some significant roles because you're going to need them to. But again, with Cool Attack coming, and then Forsyth coming as well, I think you've got some talented pieces that you can work with, especially if you're able to hold on to Jalen Moore. I think that gives you, to me, he was one of my favorite players to watch, but also he was one of their most consistent players throughout the season. So I think, if you got Pedulla, if you get Garrison, you keep Jalen Moore, you've got something to work with, especially if you're able to add maybe 1 or 2 more pieces that can be productive players for you. But hey, I mean, the seat is hot and you hate it. You hate starting a season on the hot seat. You kind of hate being in that place, even as we're just in transfer portal season, but that's just kind of the reality, unfortunately. But maybe this is the year that all things kind of come together for the Oklahoma Sooners, and they find the pieces that fit together to make an NCAA tournament run. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So go subscribe there. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter @JoshOnRef. Again, hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KRS Sports app. Also tune in to OU baseball this week up in Provo as they hope to continue their nice little run after sweeping Kansas State and go on the road to face the Cougars. You can also read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. But until next time, he's Josh. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.